Have you ever thought about how a single joke could shatter an entire life? Esteban hadn't either, until the night his wife uttered one devastating sentence that changed everything. They had dreams, plans, and a future they built together, but fate had other ideas. And in one careless moment, surrounded by friends, she said the words that broke it all apart. What did she say? Why did he walk away without looking back? And what shocking truth awaited him down the road? This is a story of betrayal, unexpected twists, and how life sometimes gives you a second chance when you least expect it. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Now, let's get started. My name is Esteban, and what I'm about to tell you is the story of how a single joke destroyed my marriage. For a long time, I believed that Melissa and I were meant to spend our lives together, but I was wrong. From the beginning, we both saw children in our future. Even before we got engaged, we would spend countless hours dreaming about our family, how many kids we'd have, what their names would be, and what traits they might inherit from us. We envisioned dinners filled with laughter, a home brimming with joy, and a playroom scattered with toys. I imagined teaching my son to ride his bike or tucking my daughter in with a bedtime story. Melissa shared that dream with the same fervor. She often talked about children with such enthusiasm, showing me videos of toddlers and saying with a smile, "One day, that'll be us." And when we got married, it felt like the right time to start our family. After years of dreaming about it, we jumped right in and began trying to have a baby. In the beginning, it felt exciting. Every new month felt like another opportunity, another chance. We even made a game out of guessing whether our first child would be a boy or a girl. Melissa brought home baby name books, and we would spend hours together imagining what our child would look like and how we would parent. But as months passed, we began to see no results. At first, we brushed it off. We told ourselves it was just a matter of time. People always say, "Don't stress, it'll happen when you least expect it." So, we waited, patient and hopeful that the time would come naturally. But as 1 year turned into 2, that excitement began to fade. Our hopeful game of guessing transformed into a quiet, unspoken hope, which then gave way to quiet disappointment. Each negative test became harder to ignore, and with every passing month, the weight grew heavier. By the 3rd year, doubt settled between us like a cold, invisible presence. We stopped talking about nursery themes. The baby name books began to gather dust on a forgotten shelf. Melissa tried to act like it didn't bother her, but I could tell. The conversations about children that once made her eyes light up now made her uneasy. She'd either change the subject or give an awkward, forced reply. We could no longer pretend everything was fine. Something had shifted. After 3 years of waiting, hoping, and convincing ourselves that time would fix it, we decided to seek medical advice. The tests were straightforward, blood samples and some routine exams. We waited nervously, hoping for a small, solvable issue, but when the doctor called us in, his words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Esteban, your sperm count is very low. At this level, natural conception is almost impossible." I was numb, struggling to understand what he had just told me. My heart pounded in my chest, and the world seemed to slow down. Beside me, Melissa was silent, her eyes fixed ahead. The doctor went on to explain that I wasn't entirely infertile. There was still a chance with medical interventions, lifestyle changes, and dietary adjustments, but I barely heard him. All I could focus on was the one thing that shattered everything. I couldn't give Melissa the family we had dreamed about. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling like my entire world had crumbled. I couldn't shake the feeling of failure. What kind of husband couldn't give his wife a child? Melissa reassured me she wasn't going anywhere. She held my hand and said, "We'll get through this together." But soon, her actions didn't align with her words. She stopped bringing up babies altogether. When friends shared pregnancy news or posted pictures of their children, she would either change the subject or quietly step away. At first, I thought it was just her way of dealing with the pain. But over time, I could sense a growing resentment. It lingered between us, unspoken, yet palpable. Then came the biting comments. One evening at dinner, she shook her head and muttered, "It just doesn't make sense. Two healthy people shouldn't be having this much trouble." Another time, she sighed and said, "Maybe if we'd started earlier, things would be different." These words were subtle, but each one cut deeper than the last. A fear began to take root in me, that she might leave. Initially, it seemed like a passing fear, a fleeting thought. But as time went on, it consumed me. I woke up with it, carried it through my day, and fell asleep under its weight. I tried to push it aside, telling myself I was overreacting, but the signs were too clear. Melissa was changing. She started staying out later, always with an excuse. I was just with the girls. I needed some space. At first, I accepted her explanations. But soon, her absences became more frequent, then regular. When she was home, she barely spoke to me. The small, reassuring gestures, the goodnight kisses, the way she used to curl up on my chest at night, had disappeared. Now she barely looked at me. The light that once sparkled in her eyes had dimmed. One evening, unable to carry the weight of unspoken tension any longer, I finally asked, "Melissa, is everything okay between us?" She exhaled deeply, her hand pressing against her forehead as though the very idea of discussing it was exhausting. "I don't know, Esteban. I just wish things were different," she murmured. Her words hit me hard, like a blow I wasn't prepared for. I'd given everything I had to fix what was broken between us. I'd followed every doctor's suggestion, taken the supplements, adjusted my diet, and exercised regularly. Yet despite my best efforts, the rift between us only seemed to grow wider. The silence in our home became unbearable. Some nights, I'd find myself sitting in the living room alone, staring at the pictures on the walls. Pictures of us, when we still had hope, when we still believed in each other. Now, the place felt more like a waiting room, filled with nothing but the heavy anticipation of what was to come, with no end in sight. Every word Melissa spoke after that carried an edge, and I braced myself for the next cut. "It's just so frustrating," she would say. "Everyone else is moving forward, but we're stuck." Then, "Maybe we weren't meant to have kids together." She never yelled, never directly blamed me, but her words were sharper than any argument could have been. I wanted to tell myself she didn't really mean it, that this was just her way of handling the pain. But deep down, I knew she was drifting away from me, and it was only a matter of time before it all unraveled completely. One evening, Melissa and I attended a casual gathering at a friend's house. Nothing extravagant, just a backyard barbecue with some drinks, familiar faces, and idle chatter. I wasn't in the mood to mingle, but Melissa seemed to be enjoying herself. She was drinking more than usual, laughing a little too loudly. I sat back, observing, letting the noise of the evening wash over me. At one point, the conversation shifted to children. A couple at the party had just announced their pregnancy, and the group erupted with excitement, offering congratulations and parenting advice. I'd learned to avoid this topic, but then someone turned to us. "So, when are you two going to give us a baby to spoil?" The question was harmless, but it landed like a punch. Melissa laughed, and then, without missing a beat, she responded loud enough for everyone to hear, "Esteban? Oh, please, he's not even man enough to get me pregnant." The room fell silent. Laughter died, and conversations halted. Some people glanced at me awkwardly, while others pretended nothing had happened. But I heard it, loud and clear. There was no pretending it away. I didn't say a word. I didn't argue, didn't tell her to stop, didn't question why she felt the need to humiliate me in front of people we both knew. I simply stood up and walked out. I wasn't angry. I was just done. There was no fight left in me. Once I got home, I went straight to the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and began packing. Just the essentials: clothes, toiletries, my wallet. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. After zipping up the bag, I took one last look around, my eyes scanning the house that had once been my refuge, but now felt like a cage. I checked into a hotel across town, turned off my phone, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was alone. No tension, no uncomfortable silences, no more second-guessing every word that came out of my mouth. Just peace. And in that peace, I found a quiet that felt more like relief than loneliness. The next morning, I turned my phone back on to find a flood of messages waiting for me. Friends who had witnessed the scene were checking in, asking if I was okay, offering to talk. Then there were messages from Melissa, one from the night before, asking where I was, another from that morning. "Are you hurt because of what I said? It was just the drink." I stared at her words, reading them over and over. No apology, no recognition of the harm she had caused. Just a flimsy excuse. I didn't respond. And when she realized I wasn't going to, she stopped texting. A few days later, Melissa found the letter I had left behind, resting on her dresser. I'd written, "I stayed through everything, the fights, the disrespect. But if even my deepest pain is just a joke to you, then I no longer belong here." Her reply was a text, telling me she had read it. I'm not sure what she felt when she saw those words, but I do know one thing. She didn't believe I'd actually leave. She probably thought I was just angry, that I'd be back after a few days or a week, like nothing had happened. But after reading that letter, I think she realized I was serious. For the first day or two, I heard nothing from her, and I assumed she was processing everything. But soon, she began reaching out, calling, texting, asking to meet and talk. I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say, but her persistence never waned. Her determination in the days that followed was unmistakable. It became evident that she had finally come to terms with the fact that I wasn't coming back. Her messages flooded in, incessant and persistent, and her calls grew more frequent and urgent. When I didn't respond, she turned to our shared circle of friends, pleading with them to intervene, to convince me to reconsider. But by then, my decision was final. There was no turning back. About a week after her efforts began, the divorce papers were placed in her hands. That was my definitive statement. No more begging, no more arguments. I was done. There was no need for any further explanations. After leaving, I rebuilt my life in a new city. The early months were challenging, being on my own, starting over. But over time, I found a sense of peace. I learned how to enjoy my own company and slowly let go of the pain that had held me captive for so long. What became most important, though, was realizing that I was more than just my ability to father children. Then I met Maris. She was different, gentle, patient, and understanding. We took our time, letting the relationship unfold naturally. For the first time in years, I felt truly wanted. A year into our relationship, she sat me down one evening. Her face was a mixture of nervousness and excitement, and I couldn't quite read her expression. Then she said, "Esteban, I'm pregnant." For a moment, my mind went completely blank as I tried to process her words. I chuckled at first, thinking she was joking. But when she remained serious, when she simply waited for my response, I understood it wasn't a joke. Confusion overtook the brief amusement I had felt. Pregnant? How could that be? The question replayed in my mind over and over. I shook my head, unsure of how to respond. "That's not possible," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. The words came out before I could stop them. Maris? Pregnant? The idea felt unreal. My mind quickly searched for an explanation. She must have been with someone else. I'll never forget the pain that flashed across her face when I made that accusation. She didn't get angry or break down in tears. Instead, she looked at me calmly and assured me that she hadn't been with anyone else, that she was certain I was the father. but doubt still gnawed at me, and I wasn't about to take any risks. I had been through too much to accept something that seemed impossible without proof. I demanded a paternity test. Without hesitation, Maris agreed, telling me that I could do whatever I needed to feel comfortable. But even as we waited for the results, a heavy uncertainty weighed on me. What if the test confirmed my worst fears? It would devastate me. But what if, against all odds, it showed I was the father? What would I do then? When the results finally arrived, everything inside me shifted. I was the father. I sat there, staring at the paper, rereading it over and over, struggling to process what I had just learned. It didn't seem real. I sat frozen, gripping the paper in my hands, trying to make sense of it all. The doctors had been so sure before. My sperm count had been low. My chances had been practically non-existent. Yet here was undeniable proof that something had changed. The very next day, I made an appointment with a fertility clinic. I needed to understand how this was possible. Was it a fluke, or had something truly shifted inside me? The tests confirmed what I had once thought impossible. My fertility had significantly improved. Whether it was due to the changes I'd made in my life, the passage of time, or something science couldn't explain, my body had done what I had long believed was impossible. I wasn't infertile anymore. The irony was overwhelming. If only Melissa, my ex-wife, had shown more patience, if she hadn't let her frustration push me away, we could have had the family we'd always dreamed of. But standing there with Maris, I realized I had no regrets. My marriage to Melissa had been marked by pressure, disappointment, and unspoken grievances. With Maris, everything was different. She loved me without conditions, without expectations hanging over us. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. As for Melissa, I have no idea what happened to her after I left. I never reached out, and she never came looking for me. Maybe she moved on and built a family. Maybe she regretted everything. Or perhaps she convinced herself that her actions had been justified. I'll never know. And to be honest, I don't care. Some things are best left in the past. Some doors are meant to stay closed. I hold no bitterness about what happened. In fact, I'm grateful. Life gave me a second chance. I've come to understand that I've found someone who truly values me for my authentic self, not for what I can provide or what I may lack. She has been by my side without hesitation, offering support without sarcasm or manipulation, and never making me feel like I was constantly falling short. When I look back on everything, it's more evident than ever that love isn't just about enjoying the easy moments. It's about sticking together when things aren't so simple. It's about having patience, choosing empathy over anger, and knowing that love isn't something conditional. Melissa had the chance to stand by me and support me through my struggles, but instead, she chose to demean me. That kind of behavior, once expressed, cannot be taken back. The words that come from someone you trust the most have a way of leaving deep scars, and those scars often hurt the most. If there's anything I want others to take away from what I've experienced, it's this: patience and mutual respect are everything. When you truly love someone, you don't weaponize their vulnerabilities, no matter how upset you might be. You don't make them feel insignificant, especially in front of others. You don't let fleeting emotions ruin something that could have been beautiful. But in the end, I'm thankful for the way things unfolded because I now have someone who loves me for who I am, without any conditions. This story has come to an end. This story is not just about lost love. It's a brutal lesson that true feelings are tested not in moments of joy, but in times of struggle. When devotion turns into reproach and pain becomes a punchline, even the strongest bonds can shatter. Love isn't just about grand words, it's about weathering life's storms together, without fear or humiliation. The irony of fate is that sometimes, by losing what we once thought was essential, we find what truly matters. Because real love isn't measured by expectations. It's defined by unwavering loyalty. What's your opinion? Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. and I'll say goodbye to you until the next video. Goodbye. Jacob always believed in love. He thought strong relationships were built on trust, compromise, and care. But over the years, his marriage turned into an invisible game, one where only she made the rules. Her weapon was simple, but ruthless: silence. The moment he said no, she became distant, cold, untouchable. At first, he gave in, thinking it was easier that way. Then, he convinced himself that this was just how relationships worked. But one day, something inside him snapped. He stopped fearing her silence. He started living for himself. And that's when everything changed. How far can manipulation go when disguised as love? Can one person completely control another without ever raising their voice? This story isn't just about marriage. It's about the power we give to those we're afraid to lose. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Now, let's get started. My name is Jacob, and today, I want to recount an experience that nearly tore my marriage apart, but ultimately transformed my entire understanding of relationships. My wife Diana and I have been together for many years. Like any couple, we've experienced both joy and hardship. However, over time, I began to notice a pattern, one I regret not recognizing sooner. Whenever Diana was displeased or didn't get her way, she never voiced her concerns directly. Instead of arguing or explaining her feelings, she would retreat into silence, shutting me out completely. Her quiet withdrawal wasn't just a means of avoiding conflict, it was intentional. Rather than engaging in discussion, she would withhold affection. Initially, I dismissed it, assuming she simply needed space or was in a bad mood. But the more I observed, the clearer it became. This wasn't a passing reaction. It was a calculated response. If I denied her a request, whether it was a favor, a decision, or something seemingly trivial, her demeanor would shift instantly. It wasn't merely a matter of physical distance. She became detached, indifferent, and cold. At first, I found myself conceding to her wishes just to maintain peace. I reassured her, attempted to ease the tension, and even altered my stance to restore harmony. And each time I relented, the moment I gave her what she wanted, she reverted to her usual affectionate and cheerful self, as if nothing had ever been wrong. Looking back now, I see how clearly she had mastered the art of control without raising her voice, without arguing, and without needing to ask twice. All she had to do was make me feel like I was losing her. And for the longest time, I fell right into the trap. I convinced myself that giving in was the only way to keep our relationship intact. But then, something shifted. I reached my breaking point. The exhaustion of feeling like I had to constantly earn my wife's affection wore me down, and I decided I wasn't going to continue playing this game. The moment that brought everything into sharp focus revolved around an expensive designer bag, an exclusive item Diana fixated on, treating it as an absolute necessity rather than a luxury. She had been hinting at it for weeks. It wasn't just something she desired. In her mind, it was something she was entitled to. I had no issue treating my wife when I could, but the way she spoke about this bag, as though I owed it to her, left a sour taste in my mouth. One evening, she brought it up again. We were sitting in the living room when she pulled up the image on her phone, her tone more expectant than hopeful. "My birthday's coming up. This is the one I want." There was no excitement in her voice, only certainty, like a deal being sealed. I glanced at the price. It wasn't impossible, but it also wasn't an amount I could justify spending impulsively. "Diana, I know how much you want it, and I promise I'll get it for you," I said, keeping my voice measured. "Just not right now." I chose my words carefully, ensuring I didn't sound dismissive. I wasn't refusing her request, just postponing it. But to Diana, that distinction didn't matter. Her expression darkened immediately. With an exaggerated sigh, she tossed her phone onto the couch. Then, without another word, she withdrew into silence. I could practically see her calculating her next move, how to make me regret not giving in right away. Finally, she broke the silence. You say, "Not now," like that actually means something. I remained composed and shrugged. It does. Soon, Diana. I just need to take care of a few other things first. That wasn't the answer she wanted. Forget it, she muttered, standing up and disappearing into the bedroom. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blank television screen, reflecting on how we had ended up in this place. When had our conversations turned into power struggles? When had compromise been replaced by coercion? Later that night, I followed my usual bedtime routine and slipped into bed beside her. Normally, I would reach for her, a simple touch, an arm around her, pulling her close. Nothing unusual, just a small expression of affection between partners. The second my arm brushed against her, she recoiled. "Don't!" Her voice was devoid of emotion. I blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "I'm not in the mood," she said, as if I had crossed some invisible boundary. But all I had done was attempt a simple touch. This was deliberate, a punishment. "I just wanted to hold you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Well, I don't want you to." She didn't even look at me. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling something within me shift. This wasn't the first time. Every time I didn't comply with her demands, she withdrew affection. Every disagreement led to silence, emotional distance, and now, outright rejection. And every time, I had been the one to apologize, the one to smooth things over, just to return to a fragile sense of normalcy. But that night, for the first time, I saw it for what it truly was. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about understanding. It was manipulation. For the first time, I refused to play along. I wasn't going to beg for my wife's affection like a desperate child seeking approval. I had made up my mind. This time, everything was going to change. I was done playing this game. Instead of draining myself in pursuit of her approval, I redirected that effort toward myself. In the days that followed, I started reclaiming the parts of me that had been neglected. The guitar that had been collecting dust in the corner. I strummed its strings again. The books I had abandoned halfway. I finally turned their last pages. I even resumed working out, not as a means to impress Diana, but because I enjoyed investing in myself. If she chose not to engage with me, that was her prerogative. If she wanted distance, I wouldn't stand in her way. I had no interest in chasing her anymore. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't consumed by the need to fix something that wasn't mine to fix. So I let it be. The transformation came naturally. I was done centering my world around someone who only reciprocated when it suited her. At social gatherings, I didn't shrink into the background. I was still the same lively, engaging person. I simply stopped reserving that energy for Diana alone. When her friends were around, I joined the conversation instead of fading into silence. I paid attention, offered compliments when I noticed a new haircut or an updated style. I laughed freely, contributed to the banter, and made sure to genuinely connect. I maintained eye contact, listened with interest, and engaged with authenticity. And the response was unmistakable. They laughed at my jokes, they sought me out in conversations, they enjoyed my company. I no longer lingered near Diana at social events. I became a presence of my own. I wasn't performing, I was simply present. I made people feel valued, and in turn, they gravitated toward me. And Diana noticed. She wasn't used to seeing me this way, relaxed, confident, effortlessly engaged. She was accustomed to me waiting for her, relying on her to determine when I was worth attention. But for once, I wasn't chasing. I was simply being myself, and that version of me was in demand. Diana had always felt secure in the dynamic she controlled. But now, my focus had shifted. At first, she didn't seem concerned. She likely assumed I was sulking, biding my time until she decided to acknowledge me again. But when she saw how easily I connected with her friends, something shifted. I wasn't watching her. I wasn't waiting. Her friends took note as well. They lingered longer, laughed more, included me in conversations in ways they never had before. Some even started reaching out to me directly, rather than funneling their messages through Diana. And that, more than anything, caught her off guard. One evening, at a casual gathering, Sabrina, one of Diana's closest friends, laughed a little too enthusiastically at one of my jokes, her hand playfully brushing my arm. It was innocent, but Diana stiffened. Then, Patricia grinned and teased, "Where has this version of your husband been hiding? I don't think I've ever seen him this fun." Diana didn't respond, but she definitely noticed, and from there, things only escalated. Layla, another friend, nudged Diana and joked, "If you ever get tired of him, send him my way." It was lighthearted, but Diana didn't laugh. In the days that followed, she became more watchful. I could feel her attention on me at every social event, analyzing each conversation, each smile, each shared moment. One evening, I walked into the bedroom to grab something and found her sitting on the edge of the bed, my phone in her hands. She was so focused, she didn't even realize I had entered. When she finally noticed me, she quickly set it down, feigning indifference. The irony? There was nothing for her to find. I had done nothing wrong. And yet, the fact that she felt the need to check spoke volumes. She felt control slipping from her grasp, and she knew it. The more she searched for proof of wrongdoing, the more frustrated she became when she found nothing. I wasn't sneaking around. I wasn't betraying her trust, and that realization unsettled her more than anything. Then, one evening, I arrived home to find her looking different. Instead of her usual oversized t-shirt and sweatpants, she wore a fitted dress that flattered her figure. Her hair was styled, her makeup subtly applied. She wasn't going anywhere. She was simply at home. But it was clear she wanted to be noticed. The shift in her demeanor continued. Suddenly, she was making an effort to talk to me again, asking about my day, laughing at things she once ignored, slipping in compliments. "You've been looking really good lately," she remarked casually while setting the dinner table. I simply nodded, thanked her, and kept my tone neutral. In the past, I would have jumped at the opportunity to bridge the gap, to fall back into the familiar rhythm where I sought her approval. But not this time. I saw it for what it was. She was testing the waters, seeing if she could lure me back in, if she still held the power to decide when I was worthy of her attention. But this time, the game had changed, and she knew it. She started cooking my favorite meals. At first, I dismissed it as a random coincidence, but by the third time that week, it was impossible to ignore. Diana had never been one to suddenly embrace the role of the doting wife without a hidden motive. In the past, these gestures always came with an expectation, a silent contract where my appreciation was the currency. But this time, I didn't indulge her. I kept our conversations polite, took my place at the table, and responded when necessary, but I no longer sought her validation. For the first time, she was experiencing the imbalance she had once carefully engineered. The power dynamic she had controlled for so long was shifting, and my attention was no longer something she could command at will. Now, she had to earn it. So, she put in more effort. She laughed at my jokes, even the ones that barely qualified as amusing. But I wasn't fooled. I saw through the act. She wasn't changing out of sincerity. She was testing the waters, waiting for me to acknowledge her effort so she could reclaim her dominance. I refused to play along, and for once, she was the one feeling unsteady. One afternoon, I was lounging in the living room, absent-mindedly scrolling through my phone when she stepped in front of me. Her stance was uncertain, her expression unusually hesitant. "I miss how things used to be," she murmured. There was weight to her words, something genuine lurking beneath them. I set my phone aside and met her gaze without speaking. She hesitated, drawing in a breath, her hands fidgeting as though she was searching for the right words. "It feels like there's a distance between us," she admitted. My face remained neutral. I wanted to see where she was going with this. Finally, she eased onto the couch beside me, her posture rigid with unease. "Can we talk?" There it was. The moment I had been waiting for, the moment she acknowledged what she had been unwilling to face. She had played the game for too long and lost her grip on it. I wasn't interested in rubbing it in. I just needed to be honest. I exhaled, leaning forward, resting my arms on my knees. "I love you, Diana," I said evenly. "But I'm done with the games." She studied me, her expression unreadable, but I could tell she was actually listening this time. "If you want affection, it has to be real," I continued. "Not something you offer when it serves your interests. That's not love, that's manipulation, and I won't be part of it anymore." She parted her lips as if to argue, but no words came. Instead, she lowered her gaze, twisting her fingers in her lap. "This marriage isn't about control," I said, my tone softer but unwavering. "If we want to make this work, we have to stop treating each other like opponents. I was never meant to be your rival." Silence stretched between us, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like a battle of wills. We weren't waiting for the other to cave. We were just two people, face to face with reality. She gave a slow nod, exhaling a breath she must have been holding for days. "I hear you," she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. The changes weren't dramatic. They were small, subtle shifts I might have overlooked before. She asked about my day, not out of obligation, but because she genuinely wanted to know. She didn't sigh in frustration when I said no. Instead, she asked why, and actually considered my answer. It was different. And while I appreciated it, I didn't rush to meet her halfway. That was the old me. I had learned my lesson. Love isn't a transaction, and I refused to abide by those terms anymore. If our marriage was going to endure, it had to be built on mutual respect, not on her deciding when I was deserving of affection. So I let her put in the effort, not to be vindictive, but because I needed to know she meant it. And she did. She stopped weaponizing intimacy. She didn't retreat when things didn't go her way. She finally understood that our relationship wasn't a game of control, it was a partnership. But the biggest transformation wasn't hers, it was mine. I had learned to value myself, to recognize that I deserved a relationship where love and respect weren't conditional. I never wanted to walk away from Diana. I loved her. But I also refused to be manipulated ever again. And because I set that boundary and stood firm, our marriage became something real. Not flawless, no relationship is, but honest. No more games, no more power plays. Just two people figuring out how to love each other the right way. And let me tell you, standing up for myself, that was the best decision I ever made. Now, I'm not saying this is a one-size-fits-all solution. Every relationship is unique. But if someone constantly makes you earn their affection, ask yourself, is this love or control? Because the truth is, real love isn't a prize you have to win. This story has come to an end. True love is not a game of control, nor is it a transaction where affection is given in exchange for compliance. It is built on respect, sincerity, and equality. If you constantly have to earn someone's attention and warmth, ask yourself, is this love or manipulation? Everyone deserves a relationship where feelings are expressed not as a means to an end, but from the heart. Only by recognizing your own worth can you build a strong, honest partnership based on mutual understanding. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Real love won't break because of it. It will only grow stronger. What's your opinion? Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from, and I'll say goodbye to you until the next video. Goodbye.